we all know how short life is. I mean, the mortality rate is still tracking at 100% the last time I checked. And even though this life is short, we still don't want it to suck. This podcast is all about tools and insights from psychology, philosophy, and spirituality to help this journey suck less. In fact, we may even learn how to embrace the life we have while creating the life that we want. My name is Morgan, and this is the PS We Expire podcast. I'm so glad you're here.
I totally believe with my entire heart that I get to choose in every interaction if I'm going to love, if I'm going to give love the verb, and if I'm going to receive love the verb back. So where I'm at is the realization that I have the power to do that, and that when I do, there's nothing missing. It is everything that I could possibly want and need and desire in my life. So I had all those other things before I actually had the realization and the embracing that love is a choice. So when you ask me, how did I get to where I'm at? That's where I'm at, is finally realizing that there is no cap to giving and receiving love, and realizing that I actually have the power to choose. All those other things happened along the way. All those other things happened along the way. So how did I get to that realization?
Yes.
It was a long and windy road. To your point, right? It's a long and windy road, but perhaps it's probably important to start with where that journey began. And maybe I'll just give a little bit and then I'll stop and you can direct the conversation. But I mean, when I was a little girl, I lost my ability to love. It was ripped from me. It was taken. It was just grabbed and taken away. And we can get into those things, but I lay that out there because then as a young woman, I felt like I don't need anyone. I don't want anyone. I actually don't need to be loved and don't want to be loved. And I began to believe that. I believed it. And it was so false. It was so false because at the end of the day, I was just like the same little girl or the same woman or the same person, like us all. I think everyone wants to be loved and wants to love, but I began to believe that I didn't. And so my actions and my choices and my decisions played out. I don't need to be loved, nor can I love, nor, and when I say love, I don't mean love the emotion. I really mean love the verb. I really mean the act of giving and receiving. So there was a big wide gap between the belief that I lost it and then the belief I didn't need it, to finally at 50 years old being, and maybe a few years before this, I embraced it. I did, to the belief that actually not only do I want it and need it, but I actually have the power to get it back. And then that was a long.
So when you said that, that love isn't a feeling, love is a verb, and that was ripped away from you as a child, what did you learn as a child about love that made it something that was that you were not interested in or didn't feel like you could give or receive that?
Well, so, and when I say, love is an emotion, right? There, love, the emotion, and then there's love, the verb. And so I'm talking love, the verb. Well, at a very, very, very young age, my dad started sexually abusing me, and it became very chronic. It happened for years, and it happened frequently. So it was constant, and it was so complicated. It's so complicated because where love comes into that is that my dad also loved me, and he also showed me love. He showed me how to brush a horse, ride a horse, do a newspaper route, the value of money, cleaning the house, how to take care of animals, my homework, how to ride a bike. I mean, just the countless examples of him giving me his love. And I know he loved me. That is, and I'm sure it's very textbook too. So it's not just me. Uh, but it was very confusing because the person whom I loved the most and whom I gave my love to in all my little girl ways, you know, all the little girl ways, all the all the normal things that you do with your dad when you're a little girl, you know, and so that, you know, so I gave my love to him in those ways. And then he gave his love to me in all the normal ways. And all mixed up in that is he was molesting me. And that's effed up. Mm-hmm. So the confusion of that, if that makes sense, versus my heart, I might digress for a second, Morgan. My heart aches when women share with me, because they share with me, right? Like, you have this platform that people share with you. And when they share with me how they were violated sexually violently, or a one-off rape, or an unexpected statutory, you know, things that were unexpected and one time or violent, or it rips me apart. Like, I am ripped apart inside because I think about my daughter and how her world would have been like, I can't even imagine my 14-year-old daughter experiencing that. And I say that to you because I didn't experience that. It became so normal and so a part of the quote unquote love that it became normalized. It wasn't an event. I mean, I remember events, but it wasn't an event, and it wasn't violent in the normal definition of violence. So that got me all effed up, basically.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I think that many of us, maybe all of us who come into adulthood and are looking back at our childhoods, are wondering, which of these things was okay? Because you think that it's normal until you meet someone who has a different experience than you do. And then you're like, oh, this actually isn't common to all of us. And so all of us are doing the work to kind of unravel the messages that we got about what love looks like and how to then integrate that into our loving adult relationships. Mm-hmm. And, you know, your experience was unfortunately not uncommon, but like you said, because of how much it was a part of your regular life, that it became so normalized. And I can see why, when you're doing the work of kind of trying to understand your childhood more, how that would present a uniquely confusing problem when you're trying to understand, like, what exactly does love look like? And there's so much evidence that we have now that has to do with like how a child's brains develop, that anytime something happens to a child that is wrong, that is bad, the child doesn't think, oh, my parent is bad, it has to be me, I'm bad, I'm the bad one, because that's the only way to continue to function in life, where it's not like the entire whole world is so scary. Like, if I can just believe that I'm the bad one, I'm the scary one, then that is a safe, you know, a quote unquote safer way to move through life.
For sure.
So when you are, I guess I'm wondering, like, at what point did you realize, like, this actually isn't normal, this isn't the experience that everybody has, and what that looked like for you to start unraveling that and healing from that?
Probably at the very beginning, I was 7. So at the very beginning, I knew it wasn't right. And then through, the chronic experience, then it became normalized. But I don't think that the feeling of, I actually don't want this, ever went away. And I knew I was different. I knew, I could see, we went to church all the time. I was a part of, that's a whole nother thing. I saw families at church. I saw other daughters with their dads at church. Girl Scouts, 4-H. And I knew it wasn't the same. I had a feeling, I could sense it. And so I always just felt, different, or all that stuff. But then, like, what started happening is that's probably like the foundational. Can I cuss on this?
Mm-hmm.
That was the foundational shit. Like that, that is, that was the foundation of the shit. And then you just pile on other stuff to that. And to your point, and I love when you interweave. I love when you interweave science and the brain and what's going on inside of us into this. Because then I started being promiscuous. I started smoking pot. I started dropping acid. At that point, I was 13 when I'm smoking pot and dropping acid and having sex. And with guys that were 16, 17 years old, because I wanted to be liked. I still wanted to be liked. And I wanted that attention, and I wanted that affection. And that is all I knew. So how do I get that attention? Oh, I actually know how to. So then you've got that compounding thing of the crap that goes on in that. And then, it just continues from there, making bad decisions after bad decisions after bad decisions. And finally, the normalness becomes like, it's normal that I'm nothing. It's not that being nothing was normal. Does that make sense? Like, does that make sense? It's the way of being became normal. But I always knew I wasn't normal. Right.
So the message that you took away from that is that you were nothing.
For sure. I finally got to the point where it's not even that I believed I was nothing, because I didn't have anything inside me to even believe anything. I truly felt nothing. And at that point, I was a severe crystal meth addict. And I was only 20. I started using crystal meth when I was very young, 16, 17. Smoking, shooting up, like very severe. And so then when I was at the point of, let's call it nothingness, I didn't even feel it, because I didn't feel anything. I just didn't feel anything. And then I'll stop. So when you say at the beginning, how did I get to where I'm at? It is so important for me that anybody that finds inspiration from me or follows me or is interested in learning more and is listening to us understands when I say where I'm at and how critical it means for the destination of where I'm at is love. It's actually pretty astonishing.
That's powerful. Something that I feel like makes so much sense is that, like you said, like feeling like nothing wasn't that you felt like nothing, but you felt nothing.
Right.
And I think that is exactly how many people live their lives is amassing stuff, finding any number of coping mechanisms to just turn the volume down on the feelings, because feeling uncomfortable feelings is really difficult. It's a really difficult way to move through life, being exposed to feeling however you're feeling. And so if in particularly in our Western cultures, how we have this very like neck up approach to thinking about success and thinking about relationships and thinking about how to, how to just do life. It's all very, logical and left brain and cerebral, and this is how we do it, and XYZ and 1, 2, 3. And we're so disconnected from the wisdom of our bodies. And in a circumstance where you have such horrific things happening to you for such a long time, it just amplifies the need to feel nothing. And I'm curious, like, at what point and what happened that you started to feel again?
It was in little moments. How about this? There was a big moment. I shouldn't say little. There was a huge moment, and then little moments that followed from there.
Talk about the huge moment.
So my huge moment is my big sister Maria, who, oh my God, Morgan, you would love her. You would love her. She is the hero to my story. I take full ownership for the great choices that I've made, but the huge moment is I really was a second away from killing myself with the intentional crystal meth overdose. And let's not say seconds, let's say moments away. And my sister intervened. She actually called me, which is a whole interesting thing in and of itself, because at that point there's no cell phones. So she found the house I was squatting at. And
how old were you at this point?
I was 20. And I lived in Tacoma, Washington. My sister lived in Fort Hood, Texas. She and I both had been in Washington. And then she got married, and her husband was in the military. So they were at Fort Hood, Texas, and they had 2 little kids. Oh, so I'm just going to do a little commercial break. So her little kid, my niece and nephew at the time, my niece was 5 and my nephew was 3. And my niece now is 32, 33, sending me pictures of her daughter because her daughter's a year and a half. And she's so cute. So I'm so close to her. I'm so close to my sister. And here I am having this conversation about this, and Brittany, my niece, sending me texts of her daughter. It's astonishing. Okay. So that's why I take a little commercial break.
I love it.
So my sister found me. She called me. They were like remember the old caller ID boxes that were hooked up? And I saw the area code 254, and I knew that was Killeen, Texas. And I picked up the phone, and it was a choice. So it was the first moment that I was cognizant that I feel something. Like there is something still here, because otherwise I wouldn't have picked up the phone. If there wasn't some sort of little bit of something in there, not complete black nothingness, or I wouldn't have. And so it was like almost like a jolt. So that was the big moment. But then after that, then the feelings that rushed in were, how am I going to do this? Because she took me away. She actually called my stepbrother, who lived an hour away from where I was squatting. And I didn't know this, but she had him come to where I was at. He found where I was at. He extricated me within hours. So there was like, an immediacy to that. But then it was, what am I going to do? I'm going to Texas to be with my sister. She doesn't know that I have needle marks up and down my arms and in between my toes. I could have AIDS. I could have hepatitis. I mean, I didn't even think about hepatitis. I wasn't that forward thinking. She was, but I wasn't that forward thinking. So then all of these other things were going through my mind of feelings, and so then I had to navigate that, because to your point earlier, it was easier not to feel. That actually was easier. And so all of a sudden, all these other emotions are smacked right in front of me: fear, shame, all of it. And even like then now what? Like, who am I without this? So all of those things started just boom, lambasting me. And so I had to navigate those feelings, and then I got through that in lots of different ways. And then it was like small, ordinary, mundane experiences that my sister created for me by living with her and her husband and her kids, that all of a sudden through the journey, I started feeling joy for these ordinary little things.
Were you resistant to feeling joy?
I was resistant to the acts that eventually were joyful. But I don't know if I was cognizant that they were going to bring me joy. But things like, because when I moved in with my sister and her husband, it was conditional. There was very much, we entered into pretty much almost a contractual agreement, a two-way agreement. And part of that agreement was the things that I couldn't do. And then part of that agreement were things that I had to do. And so family meals 3 times a day, like actually having to be with the family, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I bring that up because I was resistant to being with family. But once I started feeling like the little bits of joy about that, I think I was resistant to the feeling of joy too. Because it was, oh my gosh, what if this goes away?
Yeah. That's what I was thinking,
Yeah.
was like every feeling must have been suspect. Like
Suspect.
if the bad feelings are familiar and the good feelings are unfamiliar, oof, maybe I'd rather go with what's familiar, even though it feels really terrible. So
But isn't that something, right?
Mhm.
Because I think that's probably what we do a lot of times to protect ourselves.
For sure. For sure. It's like, I know how to armor up myself against this thing, but what is this new, like, good feeling?
Right. Right.
So what I wrote down is
Yeah.
that love sometimes looks like boundaries and love looks like a contract sometimes.
Love
Like
it. Yes.
it's like I got chills head to toe when you said that your staying with your sister was conditional. And I think that so many of us have been like kind of like we bought into this belief that unconditional love looks like not having boundaries or having limits to what you will accept. And I really have come to believe that boundaries actually create a container of safety where people know what to expect then. And the more that you can keep up your side of the agreement, the more trust you build with other people, which is the foundation of being able to have a loving relationship. It has to be built on trust. You do what you say you're going to do. I'll do what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah. I think the way that you articulated that is beautiful and completely accurate within my experience. Completely accurate. My sister's unconditional love manifested itself with boundaries. And it was those boundaries that gave me the safety and the ability to try, to actually try. fill in the blank, try whatever, but just try to live.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Unconditional love. And it manifested in boundaries.
That's a long, that's a quite a huge chunk of years from 13 to 20 to then start to undo, and new habits that need to be formed and old habits that need to be broken. How long did it kind of take you to, I mean, did you relapse? Did you have to go to rehab? What did this,
Yeah.
what did that
And
look like
you
for
know,
you?
and this is always like such the interesting part. I find this an interesting conversation because, and I'll answer those questions. Because when I think about my recovery, there's what we're talking about very specifically right now, recovering from drug addiction.
Hmm.
And so there was everything that happened to make that happen. But I didn't really start working on recovery until a decade after I was clean. Like really recovering to be a human being whose innate desire is to love and be loved. That's human, and to procreate. To procreate. As Joe, my husband, loves evolutionary biology, and he's like, and to procreate. That's so put that aside, because recovery to me really is about finally embracing the choice to love. But I had to go through recovering from drug addiction. So as that is a long way to get to answering your question, for sure, detox started when I was in Tacoma, when I was at my stepbrother's house. He kept me there for 48 hours so I could actually go through the first 48 hours of detox before he took me to the plane. And that was before 9/11. So he was able to walk me to the plane. And then my sister was there at the gate in Texas. So I was never alone, which is very important because I tried to stash drugs with me. Yeah, I tried to bring them to Texas. And my sister, oh my God, okay. So one, yes, detox. Two, outpatient services when I got to Texas. And then not Narcotics Anonymous, but AA. I went to, although that for me at the time wasn't one of the things that was helping me. And I can get into that later. But then, and then counseling. Counseling was a part of the two-way agreement. So I had to see a counselor. So like all of these things that she created, it gave me structure and daily and weekly habit or things to do to get rid of old habits and create new habits. So again, it goes back to that structure. So, and because I was physically removed from Tacoma, Washington, and moved to this new geographic location, there was no smartphones, there wasn't the web. None of that existed at the time. So this was in the mid-90s. So people couldn't find me. Now, if I wanted to find drugs, I could have found drugs. It's like you're a hound dog. Like if you want to find it, you can find it. But my sister created such boundaries and routine and frequency of things that it was just all consuming. That was an incredible tactic to help me recover from guilt. Is just routine, busy, structure, all that went into the agreement. And then about a year after I lived with my sister, I got my first job. I started working, and I started going to a community college, and I started working at a gym, selling gym memberships. And that's a really big deal because it was the first time that I learned to trust myself outside of the safety of my sister, and the first time that somebody else trusted me.
Can you talk more about that? Because when we were talking last week or the week before, and you said that your job at Gold's Gym was the hands down the best job that you've ever had. And I wanted to ask you about that anyway. So can you talk more about like what exactly that job meant to you and what that actually meant to learn to start trusting yourself?
Yeah, at first glance, people I'm sure are like, really selling gym memberships at a Gold's Gym? That was the best job ever. And absolutely, to this day, I still believe that it was. And the job itself was very mundane, cold call people and pass out flyers and welcome people into the gym and all that stuff. But what made it so significant, first off, is that the person who hired me chose to hire me. And that, like, I didn't have college degree. I didn't have a trade. I didn't have a background. And that person chose to take a chance on me. And so that was number one. And then number two is because I showed the desire to learn the job. I was also met with the desire to teach. And I learned very quickly that if you have a teacher, if you got somebody who wants to learn and you got somebody who wants to teach, wow, that can be crazy successful. And it was for us. It was for us. And I don't know that that exists in every organization or every team or every job opportunity. But here it existed. I wanted to learn. This person wanted to teach. So I think that was number two. And then number three is that it built my confidence. It built my confidence that if I did the little things great, truly great things can happen. And that do the little things great, I've carried with me in every single professional job I've had. And, that was a gym, from there, 8 years later, I was, the youngest partner that the consulting firm I worked for, which who cares? Like, who cares? I say that because it's a big deal to some people. What was the bigger deal is that I got this job at Gold's Gym. I learned how to do it. My boss wanted to teach me. I wanted to learn, and I built confidence in myself. And like, nobody can take that away.
I love that so much. I think people underestimate the power of doing the small things well, because a lot of times it's the small things that nobody else really sees. Like this is like a really maybe dumb example, but
no, tell me.
So, when you have girls at home, there's always hair places, right? And particularly in the bathroom, because you're getting out of the shower, you're brushing your hair, you're blow drying your hair. There's always hair on the floor. And so I bought this little, God, this is so dumb. Why am I telling you this?
No, I want to know. I want to hear
I bought this little handheld vacuum, which is so great. And then you just like vacuum up it's just for that job. That's the only thing that it's for. It's just get the hair. And I was realizing that the only time I hear about the hair situation is when it's there. I don't really hear much about like that when it's not there. And the reason why this is significant is because I'm the only one who knows how often I vacuum that up. Because usually, it's like we only notice when the things are left out and the shoes are left and dirty, all this stuff, but there's so much to be said for doing things, even if nobody is going to see it or recognize it, because it is something that is important to you, because you feel like it's going to improve the lives of the people that you care about. And so, I mean, that maybe is just like a really stupid example to say that doing the small things well, even if nobody else is going to notice, is what builds so much self-trust. Because it's like, it's like you stop ignoring these little pings in yourself of what would be good to do, and you just start doing them. And so then there becomes less and less tension inside. There becomes less and less incongruence inside, because you're continuing to act on even the smallest things to improve your own life. And that's a really, really powerful thing to notice in ourselves.
Yes, completely. And you nailed it. It for me, doing the small things helped me build trust in myself. I couldn't inspire the trust of anybody else unless I built trust in myself. And that's what it did. And I carried that over in every single aspect of my life to this day. To this day. So it's like, how can it not be the best job in the world? Or maybe how about this, the best job I've ever had? When all that I learned, I have carried with me for another 3 decades. 3 decades? No,
So
I'm aging myself a little bit more. But like, how about this? For 25 years.
Yeah. So after Gold's Gym, how long were you there and what happened next?
So that was in Killeen, Texas. And I was, God, I can't even remember. It was probably about 6 months of being at that gym. So at this point, I had been with my sister for a year and a half. And so I'd been clean for a year and a half, been with my sister and her family for a year and a half, and at Gold's Gym for about 6 months. And then my boss at Gold's Gym, see if I could, I'm going to try to do, I always give the short version of this, and I want to just give you a little bit more context. The short version is what happened from there is I got on a bus from Killeen, and I took that bus to Spartanburg, South Carolina, to help my boss open up a new gym in Spartanburg. The reason that's important is because I left my sister. So I got to the point where I trusted myself enough to get on the bus to leave Killeen, Texas. In a nutshell, that's why it's the best job ever. But what had me do that is, and this actually ended up taking me to my consulting kind of career in a different way, is there was a consulting firm called American Club Systems who would go to these small gyms that were owned by bodybuilders, basically, right? Gold's Gym was owned by, somebody who really liked to work out, but didn't quite know how to run a business. And then this person wanted to expand to new gyms. And so this consulting company came in and would help these small business owners grow and expand. So when I was in Killeen, this consulting firm came in and noticed me. I was the first one in, I was the first one out. I knew everyone's names. I knew all the kids' names. I walked the floor. I didn't stay in the office. When I needed help, I asked the manager for help. I literally absorbed every bit of sales technique and information this consulting person that was in there gave. I was like, oh, tell me more. And then what? And then what? And so it was the consulting firm that said, with the boss of Gold's Gym, he's opening up 3 new gyms, Spartanburg, Asheville, and then this very small town in Georgia. Will you be a part of the pre-sale team? Which means you go to that location for 90 days and the gym's not even open. And I lived out of a motel. I mean, it was disgusting. I lived out of a motel. I ate fast food. I worked out of a trailer all day. It was disgusting. And I couldn't have been happier. And so I did that. And it was awesome. Like, it literally was awesome. I took a bus and I lived out of a Motel 6 and I ate Burger King and I worked out of a trailer showing blueprints to a gym. And I was like, there's nobody that's more successful than me. So I did that for a couple of years, and that took me to a gym in Chicago. And when I landed in Chicago, which I ended up staying in Chicago for 22 years before I moved to my husband's hometown, then my career took off from there, because I was at the right place at the right time.
So you went to do...
I had the right people that wanted to help me out at the right place at the right time.
That's a really lovely caveat. That's what I'm hearing throughout all of this is like you had your stepbrother, your sister, the first person that hired you at Gold's Gym, the consulting company that noticed you. It's like, and I have this in my window right here. I have this little picture of it's from The Incredibles, and it's Edna Molds, and she says, so this is a quote I have. It says, "Darling, luck favors the prepared." And that's what I feel like I'm hearing as like this kind of through line through all of this is like, you continue to just show up. You continue to show up for yourself. You continue to show up and do the small things, which lead to excellence in the big things. And the more that you put yourself in the position of just doing things well, people are noticing. And so then when the right time and the right people are there, you are available and willing and able to meet the next challenge that comes to you. So you go to this gym in Chicago, and then what happens after that? How did you?
Oh my God, do you really want to know this?
Yes.
I don't talk about this because there's never any space to talk about this. I love
Tell me more.
Tell me more. I love sharing this with you. Before I answer your question though, something that just popped in my head and heart, the way that you just narrated that is 100% couldn't agree with you more, that there's always been someone who has actually made a choice before I made a choice back, which is interesting, right? When we think about this, the other thing that popped in my head that's interesting is all along the way, I was giving a little bit of love and I was receiving a little bit of love back. So there was a journey of me unearthing this desire and ability to love, because that's all acts of giving and receiving love. It just took me a really long time to finally open up to it all, but I just think you just made me really reflect on the journey, because it has been a journey, and it required more than just me. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. But I'm going to try and make this fast. So I'm in Chicago, which is really not Chicago. It's a gym that's opening in Buffalo Grove, and it's a ladies only gym called Corey Averson. And Buffalo Grove is a high Jewish population. And it's one of the wealthiest, for sure, one of the wealthiest areas in Illinois. It might be one of the wealthiest areas in the country, Buffalo Grove and Highland Park. I tell you that because I'm as poor as can be. Like literally this job, I didn't have health insurance. I barely made a paycheck. I only lived, they paid for my motels, so I didn't have to worry about that. I only had shorts because I was in the South. So I had shorts and then like the gym polos, the Gold's Gym or whatever, the gym. I had Corey Everson. I tell you all that because I was not prepared for the wealth. I was not prepared for the cold. I was not prepared for the community that smacked me in my face, in a good way, in an amazing way. I didn't ever feel like I belonged to the community there, but they embraced me into their community. And so when I worked out of this little trailer for 90 days for this ladies only gym, these women would come in and, they would just pay for these gym memberships, cash for, up front and all that. I was like, oh my God, who are you people? And then they started asking me, oh my God, who are you? You're here every day. You're smiling. My kids. So they started bringing me like soup and sandwiches. It was so unbelievable to me. They saw me as this young girl, I was in my mid-20s in shorts, and winter's coming around. And they just started doing, and I say they because it was a lot of women just kind of put me underneath their wings or whatever. And then the gym opened and I ended up staying because the general manager who was supposed to come in, his father died. And so they just had me stay to be the standing manager, which I had never done. which this is the other big deal. Like, I had never managed a team or managed the operations of something. I had never done that, but I did. And I learned a ton, and it went well. Then I'll get off it. More than one of these women who became, just, some of them became my friends. Some of them just became community members that I aspired to, try to be like. But they started coming to me and saying, "Oh, Trish, you got to go talk to this person I know at Baxter or Aetna or Abbott, or, there's this thing called pharmaceutical outside sales or insurance sales or medical supply sales. Like, that's what you got to do." So they opened up my eyes to what selling could be outside of the gym. And one, two, they introduced me to people that were hiring entry-level outside sellers at these companies. And then number three is I didn't get any of the jobs because I don't have a college degree. There was one connection made to one person at Aetna, which is a health insurance company. And the general manager at Aetna took a meeting with me. And at the end of the meeting, he said, "We're starting up a new channel, a brand new channel, and I need somebody tenacious." And then he hired me. And then from there, he called me Tenacious Trish. I was Tenacious Trish. So there you go. That's like, and again, it was people helping me, wanting to. And by doing all those little small things, great things like opened up. And then I kept doing the small things, and then bigger things opened up. But it always, there was always someone that made a choice too.
So at what point, you said that when you became sober, and you had been, off of substances for over a year, you said that it took a decade to really start healing. Can you talk about that and perhaps how, I imagine that some of it coincided with the timeline of some of these other things that were happening in your life, but I'm really curious about that part of your story.
Yeah. And I would say the healing part, or I'll keep going back to embracing boundless love. If we just put like a kind of a mantra on it of my destination, it's after creating the professional success and achieving independence around that was like a big deal. And independence very much supported my false mantra that I didn't need anyone and I didn't want anybody to need me. It was great, sales chart, be top on the sales chart, work. And then I was 30 years old. I worked for this incredible company, this consulting firm I ended up going to. And I never went to bars or drank or anything like that. So all of my interactions were work related. And I started noticing that where I was friendly with everyone, totally friendly with everyone, I really enjoyed being with people and I enjoyed that work interaction. I wasn't friends with anyone. I didn't have a friend besides my sister. And she didn't live there. So it was literally the first time that I acknowledged that I didn't belong, or that my sense of belonging was tied to my sales results. That's how I viewed it. I don't actually think that was true. I think people loved me and would have accepted me whether I was a top seller or not, but I never really gave them the chance to make that decision. So I realized I wanted to be a friend. I wanted a friend. And so I made the choice to join a running club in Chicago Cause like, how am I going to make a friend outside of work? I don't go do anything. I literally don't do anything. I work and go home. And so I joined this running club, and I ended up, and it was CARA, which is Chicago Area Runners Association. And I ended up meeting and running with and becoming incredible friends with 5 other women in this running group. And we ended up training for a marathon together. And I call them my marathon girls. And they for sure were my first community, where I actively chose to create belonging for myself and for them. And it was I learned, for community and belonging or friendship, however you want to say it, it requires reciprocity. You have to choose to want to belong, and those other people need to choose to help you belong. So that was like the first thing, and it was a big deal. And it was a big deal because it took me a while to open up to them and start sharing some of my experiences. And they really, I loved them. I still love them. And that was the first experience of not romantic. So there wasn't the fear of intimacy. There wasn't the fear of ever having to make a decision about being a mom. Like I wasn't at that recovery place yet. But I was at the place where I wanted to love to my fullest to these friends, and I wanted to receive all that they gave back to me. And that was a very significant time.
That's hugely significant. So I wrote down friendly but not friends. And I think that many people who are lonely have fallen into this rut where they don't recognize the difference. So they're like, I'm friends with everyone, but if there isn't that depth and trust and reciprocity, then we're just being friendly. Like I was thinking about the women who brought you soup and sandwiches. It's easy to be friendly. It's difficult to be friends.
Yeah.
Because it does require a level of intimacy and risk that does not show up when you're just being friendly with someone, because it's really easy. It's really easy to be friendly with someone on a Wednesday, when it's like in the afternoon.
True.
And it's harder to be friends with someone when they're really breaking down about something at, on a Saturday morning. And
it's true.
Yeah. And so I really admire the awareness that you had of yourself when you realized like, oh, my life is just work, and I'm not actually connecting with people. And that you actually went out and did something that you, again, it's like, I see this like pattern where you're like, I'm going to position myself in a place where I up the chances that I will get what I want. And so perhaps I suspect that if you had joined that running club and you didn't make any friends like you wanted to, that you would have found something else to do, in order to get the thing that you were really looking for. And I love that you found camaraderie and reciprocity with this group of women, and that that healed something in you too.
Yes.
And it sounds like a really pivotal point in your recovery.
It completely pivotal. I'm going to do a pause really quick. My laptop says that it's dying, so I'm just going to grab my cord here in a second. How about this with the friend thing? I carpool. I drive our neighbors to the bus with my son, Sam. Sammy's 12. And the neighbors, the girl is a sophomore in high school. And we were just chatting. She always sits in the front seat. And we were chatting it up about something. And yesterday, she's giving a speech at school. And last year she gave a speech, and she said, I know it was really good because people that don't know me came up and, told me how great it was and how inspired they were and how they believed my stance. And she said, my friends all told me that, but they could be lying.
Hmm.
And I think that is a very young experience, right? Like that just is a high school type of experience. But I thought to myself, that's really interesting, because I know, and we know as women and as adults and have going through the things we've gone through, a friend is one that doesn't lie. Like
Yeah.
that would never be like, oh, my friend would tell me I that was good, but they could be lying.
Oh,
We know
interesting.
as adults that in fact it's the opposite. The
Yeah.
candor, the constructive feedback, the give it to me straight. And because we have a bond, that criticism, if you're going to say it as criticism, whatever, it doesn't hurt us. It actually elevates us. It elevates the strength of the bond that we have. So anyways, that's what made me think about that. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, Morgan, you just keep guiding, because I feel like, oh my gosh, you're spending so much time.
This is great.
There we go.
This is great.
There we go.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
so you have this running group with these women, and then it's at some point you meet your now husband.
Oh, Joe. Joe always gets the short end of the stick. I've been like, literally, when I deliver inspirational speeches, people know I'm married, because I am cognizant about like putting him in there just for like a second.
Mm.
And then people will come to me and they'll be like, tell me about Joe. I was like, oh, poor Joe. And he knows. He's the most, well, how about this? He's the perfect person for me. He's the perfect person for me. So through all of that experience, if we just, say, oh my gosh, from the time I picked up the phone with my sister to the running girls, if we just think about it that way, I had a couple of relationships. So I did have a couple of actual relationships with women, and loved them in the way that I could. So there was intimacy, there was emotional intimacy, there was sexual intimacy. So I experienced that with two women, who at the time I loved in the way that I could love. By the time I met the running girls, I was by myself again, and dated and hooked up with guys. I did that all along the way too. Like I was never, ever monogamous. So you could say I was never faithful, because I portrayed monogamy. I always constantly had a undercurrent of I am the person who doesn't need or want you. And actually, it wasn't even an undercurrent, because I even did this to Joe when I met him, which is, listen, if you want to spend time with me, this is how it is. And like, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I don't do. With the two women, it was different, because we were in a committed relationship, yet I still cheated, because sex to me was, it just, there was just no boundaries around it for the obvious reasons. So then when I was dating and hooking up with some men, I loved that I was the woman who didn't want a commitment, who didn't want a relationship, who didn't want to get married, who didn't want to have kids. And in fact, I didn't want to wake up to them. So there was a lot of shit going on there. There was a lot of shit going on there. And I actually found that powerful. I found it powerful that the women of my age at the time all wanted to get married and have kids, and guys could sniff that out like nothing. You know, like oh, that person wants a commitment. Oh, Trish, she doesn't want anything. I want her. I mean, it was very, you know, the facade I think I put on was I don't need or want anyone. I liked the feeling that I got back, which is they wanted me more. So in fact, I really did need and want. You know, like, I mean, it's so complicated. It's like a complicated realization or acceptance, but I did need and want. And my way to get wanted was I don't need and want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that went on for a long time. Poor Joe. Like, and he knows all this. Oh God, he's like, so it was the running girls. It was the running girls who were like, you gotta do something besides just work and run. And you gotta, you know, like, you gotta really like find someone that you want to spend time with. I'm like, you know, I don't want. And by the way, I didn't want to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I literally, Morgan, permeated like just all of the energy that I put out there in the world is all I truly care about is doing great at work, being with my running friends, and Trish. Really. So they convinced me to do something different. I besides work, it wasn't like they were thinking I would find my husband. But so I took acting classes in Chicago because I did public speaking for my job. I always loved it. And I thought, you know, taking some acting classes would help with that. And it would be fun. And so I did. I was 32. I think I was 32. And I got paired up with this really cute, this really cute younger guy, Joey. And that's how I met him. And he's 5 years younger than me, or almost 5 years younger than me. And Joe and I met, and when we met, so we met in Chicago. He's from Boston. And when we met, I gave him like the rundown that I give to everyone. Like, when I knew he wanted to hang out with me, which really meant he wanted to hook up with me. You know, when I knew that, I gave him the lowdown that I gave to all the guys. Listen, I'm bisexual. I don't get into relationships with men. I do enjoy being with men. So I'm great to hang out if you want to hang out. I work all the time. Don't expect me to make a commitment to a date, even, let alone a life. And are we good? And Joe, like most at the very beginning, are like, yeah, I'm good with that.
Right.
He's like, yeah, I'm good with that. Mm-hmm. And when he introduced me, when he told his parents and his sister about me, that's exactly how he described me. I'm hanging out with this chick, Trish. She's bisexual. She doesn't want a commitment. Neither do I. And it's his mom that said to me years later, she's like, Joe wasn't fooling me a bit. The second he told me about you, that he said, I'm having coffee with this bisexual girl, Trish. And that was a facade too. You know, that was like all part of my protection. You know, it was all part of what I did at the time. But I do think it's funny that his parents, before they ever met me, his mom was like,
that's so funny.
Tell.
Yeah.
I could tell this more. And then it wasn't roses, you know, it wasn't all roses. We were hooked up, but then we were on again, off again, 3 times, three breakups. And the last breakup was pretty severe. I broke his heart. It broke my heart. to break his heart, but I broke his heart, which was to be expected. It was, and I was like, but I told you this is what was but I actually told you that I was going to do this. So I actually don't need to hold on to any accountability because I told you. And what a bunch of shit that is. You know, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to manipulate you. I'm going to tell you. So when I do hurt you and I do manipulate you and I do lie to you,
that's on you, buddy. Right.
I already told you.
Yeah.
So I did that to him, and it took us a really long time to get through it. And we broke up for a year, didn't see each other or talk for a year. And then I made amends.
Why did you do that?
I was flying back from a business trip, I think from Seattle. And I accepted the realization that I wanted to be a mom. And as soon as I allowed myself to accept that I want to be a mom, regardless if I could ever totally protect a daughter or not.
Oof.
Joe, without a doubt, was the only person that I would do that with. And he knows this. So, you know, we do talk about, if I didn't want to be a mom, would I have married him? And I wouldn't have gotten married. I, since that realization, fell in love with him more than I could have possibly imagined. And then I would have married him without being a mom. But I didn't know that then.
Mm-hmm. And he just happened to be available when
Can you believe
when you
it?
came to that realization.
Can you believe it? He was dating
a year later.
He was dating.
Wow.
I was dating this other guy. He was dating this girl, and I called him, and he was very. He's just. I mean, to this day, I like, why did he fall in love with me? I don't know. I honestly, Morgan, don't know. And he'll say it wasn't a choice. He said, I didn't choose to fall in love with you. It just is. It's like air. It's like breathing. I fell in love with you. And I'm like, thank God. Thank God. But he very much put boundaries. So if we go back to my sister with boundaries and conditional, when Joe and I got back together, strict boundaries, like getting back together was conditional. And he was very specific about those conditions. I mean, like, I'm like literally telling you everything. No sex, like no sexual intimacy. When I say I'm going to do something, I actually need to do it. You know, coffee date, movie date, go to the grocery store, whatever.
Yeah.
Things like it was very specific. You commit that you're doing something with me, you follow through on that commitment. He wanted to go to counseling with me about my dad. We ended up not going together because I just didn't want that. But I started seeing another therapist, which I've gone through therapy, this whole recovery process, different therapists. So there were things that were conditional,
Yeah.
But then one more thing, and then I'm just going to stop because now I'm just like gushing with my Joe story is, I knew immediately when I was on the plane and I called him that I had made the choice to commit to him. And once I made the choice to commit, those conditions were easy. It didn't matter. They didn't matter. It was like, because I chose to commit to him. And I knew what that meant. And we were engaged 6 months later and we got married a year later.
And now
And
you
then
have
popped
two
out Lily,
beautiful
and then
children.
popped out Sam.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. 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 I think that's a really beautiful overlay to this phrase that love is a choice. Where if like sometimes that can sound very heavy, like love means that I'm going to choose to do these things and but instead what I'm hearing is like that love made that choice easy, that it
Yes.
wasn't a burden to do any of those things because it was motivated by love. And what that makes me think of is the reality that when we are walking in alignment with our deepest needs, our deepest desires, our deepest truth, that it's easier to do those things. That, you know, like, not that it's always going to be fun, but because you are so sure that that is aligned with you, that it becomes easy. And I like
Yes.
that this, what you talked about with like, when you were honest with yourself about wanting children, all of these things became clear. And I think that that's a really pivotal, like key point for so many people who maybe are feeling like stuck in life or a bit aimless or whatever. I wonder how much of that is that we haven't learned how to just be honest with ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. Right? Because it's there. It's there. The
Yes.
truth is there. The alignment, or maybe the alignment isn't there, but your beliefs are there.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's just so many reasons why we resist. My love for Joe was there, but I resisted it. I didn't want to relinquish all the, the little remaining love that I hadn't given away. I didn't want to relinquish it. But then through that experience, I learned love begets love. The more you give, the more you have to give.
Do you think some of that too has to do with like, if we don't really believe that we're worthy of that kind of love, then I can't give away this last little shred of love that I have, because if I give it away, what's left? Nothing, just me. And I don't deserve to have that reflected back to me.
Yeah, totally. Yet, and I'm certain you've experienced this as a mom and on your journey with your children. It doesn't go away. It just there's just more. There is just more to give. And in fact, the less I give, because I still find myself holding back, like I'll hold back. I still hold back. And then that is when it becomes more limited, and dangerous. Like, uh-oh, don't relapse. Like that would be my relapse, is being guarded.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's during the pandemic, Joe and I became even closer. And before the pandemic, I've traveled all the time, like Sunday through Thursday, most weeks. So it was a question mark. I like flew back from San Diego one day and I never got on a plane after that, until 2 years later. So the question mark was, holy shit, what is this going to mean with me and Joe and me inserting myself into the family and all that stuff? I fell more in love with him through the pandemic. And I got incredibly hurt because when I verbalized that to him and I showed it to him, he doesn't receive and give love the same way that I do. And he actually kind of was like, oh, he didn't react the way I wanted him to. And here I was falling more in love with my husband after we've been married for 10 years and 2 kids. And I didn't receive it back the way that I wanted to. And my number one relapse reaction is, fuck you. And not in those words, I love him and we're going to be married forever, but in my, whew. So guess what? you know what, buddy? You know what that means? This is what's going on in my head. It's capped. It's capped. It's not going to, like, what the love that you have from me is all you're getting. Because it seems to be enough. Like, that was my go-to relapse reaction. And that is the opposite of choosing to give all my love. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so it's like literally for me a modern day example of why people choose to be guarded and to hold back and to protect it. But it's not about Joe. The choice is about me. And in order to truly, truly create and hang on to and have like this enduring, lasting, true success in our lives, we're the ones that hold on to the choice to give love, no matter what. And like, that's on me.
I hate that that's true.
I know. Right?
It's so much easier to be like, you didn't ... instead of
Totally
continually looking for the areas where we need to reclaim the personal responsibility. Ugh.
Morgan, I just love spending this time with you and you just choosing to learn more about me.
Well, I think that you said something to me that has really stuck with me about when we choose to share with other people, when we choose to open up and tell the truth about our experiences, that either you have a sense of connectedness with someone because you're both open to sharing, or you connect with them because you're sharing similar things. And I think that's a really beautiful thing for people to hear when they feel very alone in what they're going through, that we don't necessarily have to find someone who has gone through the same experience that we have in order to have that connection, but just in the spirit of authenticity and vulnerability and honesty, that there can be deeper relationships. And I think that's really at the heart of it. That's what all of us want, is because as much as we can have this armor up that says I'm alone and I'm fine with that, that's a lie. And the sooner that we can really brave the truth that we don't want to be alone, as risky as that feels because of any number of ways that we've been hurt over the course of our lives, the sooner that we can really be like, yeah, I actually want and need other people.
Yeah.
Oof. That's what else is really being human other than that?
And that it's scary.
It is really scary. Especially, I'm so grateful that you shared your experience of expressing love to someone who you know loves you so much and not getting the response that you were hoping for, and how easy it is for us to put up that fuck you wall.
Yeah,
so
right.
Easy. And I find that, like, I mean, that is absolutely my go-to when I'm like, hey, I did this thing. I vacuumed up the hair and you didn't notice.
Don't you know that little thing that I do 5 times a day?
Yes. Well, fine. I'm not going to do it anymore. Or I'm not going to, X, Y, Z. I'm not going to do these things anymore to show that I love you. If you can't show me that I'm appreciated in that. Yeah. And that's, that's really difficult, but it's like, this is what I'm learning. If I can, instead of putting up that wall right away, if I can very delicately and compassionately sift through to see what things are mine and what things are others, what responsibility is mine, what belongs to other people, and then learn how to effectively communicate that to the people that I care about and actually ask for what I want. Yeah, even that is risky, but it's what's on the other side of that either is clarity about that relationship or getting the love that you're asking for.
Right. And just communicating.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
Why is it so hard?
Yeah.
It's so
And
hard to
especially when
do.
you enter into into an interaction and you don't know if that person is choosing to communicate or to receive the communication. I mean,
Yeah.
because it does take two, but we can only control ourselves and our
Yeah.
choices. And I mess up all the time. Like I literally, there's so many times I'm like, oh, well, certain that wasn't giving love. Like, uh,
Mm,
I'm sure that's not on brand.
right.
But it's like, but that's the thing, it's the act of choosing in every interaction. It just
And also
so
not like being so hard on ourselves when we don't choose the thing that
yes.
that is on brand or that aligns with us the most. It's like, oh, there I go again. Oh, oh, me with the walls.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I recognize this pattern in myself because it's very easy for us to be like, oh, I'm such a terrible person and there's so much I still need to work on.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Mhm.
it's that compassionate self-directed awareness and inner gaze that allows us to continue
Yeah.
to recognize our patterns and do things differently going forward. Anyway, we didn't even like start to talk about what you're doing now. Can we
Doesn't even
talk?
matter.
Let's just.
Oh,
I really do want to ask, like,
yeah.
to just do like a little kind of synopsis of how you got out of what you were doing for so long into what you're
Yeah.
doing now, and why.
So I would say, how about this? What I'm doing now, I'm the founder and CEO of a small firm called Enduring Success Strategies. There's really two components to this. Uh, One is I help professional services companies create better relationships with their customers. The way that manifests itself is I really work with sellers, account managers, consultants, attorneys, and a little bit of a niche of working with teams that don't necessarily identify as being a seller, yet they're in a position where they need to create enduring relationships with clients and grow that business. So I work with them very much on building trust-based relationships. So I love it. I've been doing that now for 4 years. And so then the other side of business, which they uh, interweave a lot, if that's sales and client relationship development, the other side is personal and team development. And this is where my inspirational speaking really plays out. So in both areas, I'm a keynote speaker and then facilitate team development workshops and then coach leaders and individuals. If you think about it in those three categories, the inspirational speaking for personal and team development, I get to go out and, whether it's on a big stage with 1,000 people or an intimate setting with 7 leaders, I get to, in an abbreviated way, take them on an inspirational journey using my personal story where I introduce uh, the secret to creating enduring success and which the secret, we've talked about it, giving and receiving love. But I take them on a journey and I introduce the 5 critical choices that I made in order to get to that point and embrace it. So I do that a lot, and I really, really love working with smaller, intimate groups because it allows for not only for them to experience an inspirational journey, but then we kind of flip the table, and then I facilitate and guide that group through a discussion and use those 5 choices and they apply them in their lives.
Hmm.
And you and I are going to go through this because you're going to let me interview you for my Choose and Become interview series, where I use those 5 choices to pull lessons and experiences and wisdom from people who I admire.
Hmm.
So I do that a lot. And then maybe the last thing that I say is I've spent 30 years in business development, 30 years selling. Like I still like that's still my business. It's all around relationship development, sparking and nurturing relationships. helping people out in the way I can, whether it manifests, working with their sales team or manifests it in this inspirational way. And then what made me leave my traditional working for other people, and I was with a private equity firm for a while, is that when Lily turned 8 years old, I experienced making my fifth choice. And that choice led me to the realization that there is no cap to our ability to give love if we choose to do so. And when I realized that, I then became determined to take my craft and my gift professionally and go out and try to inspire the masses. So that desire to inspire others to believe that they can create enduring success through choosing love really is what made me go out on my own. And then, the consulting stuff is a great way to keep doing that.
Yeah, I love that. Can you share what the 5 questions are?
Yes. And oh my gosh, we like interwove so much of it in a deeper way in this conversation. So the first choice was to pick up the phone when my sister called. When I'm working with groups, I liken that to making a first choice, because we all make first choices, because we can't, there is no success without making a first choice. So for me, that was a first choice. Now I've since made other first choices that weren't so profound. So the first is make a first choice. The second is commit to a two-way agreement. So the two-way agreement that I committed to with my sister when I moved in with her in Texas, and I've really reflected on that. And we talked about it today, the power of committing to a two-way agreement. And we're both in this together for a mutually beneficial outcome. I'm giving and receiving, and you're giving and receiving, but the power is in committing to it. Because I think we enter into two-way agreements all the time, informally and formally. I'm not sure we commit to them. So that was second. The third critical choice for me was to build trust, first in myself. And this is the Gold's Gym. I learned how to build trust, like literally making cold calls, but build trust in myself and then inspire the trust of others. And then the fourth critical choice for me was the Marathon Girls, creating community and belonging, actually choosing to create my belonging. And then the fifth choice, and there's an act that goes along with that with Lily, but the fifth choice is embracing our boundless capacity to give love and to receive love. And the action or the story around that for me involves Lily at 8 years old and a stable and a little pony named Mona. So for me, those choices were linear and sequential. But I truly believe that anyone can create enduring success by just choosing to give and receive love. Like literally, if we just started there, then all those other things naturally happen. It's almost like it's not even a choice, because I'm choosing to give love. I'm choosing to commit to a two-way agreement. I'm choosing to make the choices that I need to make. So, but for me, I couldn't leap there. It took me quite a while to get to that fifth choice.
I wonder if like you said, if the fifth one isn't even really a choice necessarily, it's almost just like a realization of what is. It's just, and I wonder if the previous 4 choices take us to a place where we finally are aware of the reality of the reciprocity of the universe, or the reciprocity of what it means to be human, as we're all connected in this trying to just figure things out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree with that. For me, those 4 choices, whether it's linear for someone else or not, but those 4 choices led me to the realization that there is no cap on our innate ability to love, but it is still a choice whether or not to embrace that. It is still a choice whether or not to allow my wall to come down and love Joe even more and show him the love that I feel, even when I don't get back what I want in the way that I want it, which hurts.
Yeah.
So that is a choice. Like it's a choice to I'm whatever, a manifestation of giving love might be picking up the phone and calling your parent, where it's like, oh my God, I got to do this. But I know that I need to do this. And there's all these reasons why I'm not doing it. But giving my full love right now is picking up the phone and calling.
Mm.
That's a choice. We might realize it without choosing to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, so many takeaways from this conversation. Thank you for being so open and for letting me in on the nitty-gritties of so many of these life experiences and for weaving it all together so beautifully.
Oh, well, thank you for giving me the space, the prompting questions. And might I say, accepting the love that I gave to you today.
Right back to you. Yes.
You're awesome. You're awesome. And your platform is fantastic for the community, for my community, and just for me and you right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think I shared this in the call that we met on, where I very selfishly am like, even if nobody else, other people will listen to this, but even if nobody else hears this, like this fills me up. This makes me even more sure of the types of conversations I want to have with the types of people I want to talk with. So very selfishly, I'm like, yeah, this was like just the best hour and a bit that I could spend today.
That's why it was like when we were talking before, we should hit record.
Right.
Like literally, it's just us being in dialogue.
I love it. I love it.
I appreciate you, and I look forward to spending more time with you.
Me too. Me too. And for all of my listeners, before we go, P.S.